Hey there, Facebook friends and family. It's Patricia Hayes here with the next round of the 15-minute advocate. I'm glad to be starting yet another series following this next month. And this series is going to be called What to Do When, Fill in the Blank. And the series is going to focus on four things. What to do when your topic gets changed unexpectedly or on short notice. Let me see, what was the other one? Oh, when your time gets cut. Ooh, that's a big one, right? When your time gets cut. Number three, when your presentation is not going over exactly as you anticipated and it's not being received well. And then lastly, let's see, what was going to be the fourth one? What to do when it'll come to me. I just went blank. But anyway, it's a 4-part series of what to do when. And this first part in the series is what to do when your topic gets changed with or on short notice, or perhaps the what you expected to be able to be speaking on is really slightly different. And this is something that happens often, and normally it happens in a couple of different ways. Number one, it happens in a way, or for different reasons. Number one is if, for example, someone gave you a suggested topic, and then they changed it on you without really telling you. So perhaps you prepared thinking, oh, this is going to be the topic, but then when you finally see the actual printed program or something, it has something different. That's a huge no-no. We'll talk about how to address that. Number two, let's say you have a topic and you thought you were all clear on it, but the approach to it was different. And so there you are thinking you're going to have to, you're going to go at this one way, and it's been like, well, no, we really want to address it Y, and you prepared for X. Okay. And or let's just say it's just plain old, like the topic changed. Plain and simple, like it's shifted. They told you a topic, you thought you had an agreement on what the topic was, what the focus was, and they came to it at the last minute, let's say, days, if you're lucky, beforehand to say, hey, yeah, no, we really need this to happen. All right. All of situations of which are have varying levels of uncoolness. Ones, though, that you can deal with, and a couple of things that you can do to kind of address it ahead of time, right? So in order to address it ahead of time, before getting into the details of each one of them, the first thing you can do when you get asked to speak at something or to present or whatever is to try to nail down as tightly as you can right up front what the parameters are, okay? And we'll talk a little bit about this next time when we talk about when your time gets cut. But there are lots of parameters you want to get cut. The date, the time, how much time do you have, the topic. What is it you're wanted to speak on? What's the presentation supposed to be the focus of it? What's the point? Who the audience is. This will help you a lot as well, because this gets to point 3 when we're talking about, when something's falling on deaf ears perhaps and it's not going over the way you expected. All right. All of these things that you want to nail down up front as much as possible, as early as possible. And then to harp on it in case you have it. I mean, up until, whatever the parameters or timelines are, it depends on what it is you're presenting for. If you're presenting for a lunchtime series where, let's say, they're expecting you to provide, a bio and a short summary, a synopsis of what it is you're talking about 2 weeks before the event, well, then you should be pretty clear, because if you have to do that, then it's what it is. Or if it's a conference where perhaps you have to provide an outline up to a month ahead of time, okay? Or something where, they may not ask it after it's confirmed. That's when you definitely want to confirm, hey, I'm speaking on this topic at this time on this day. I want to make sure, clarify, because that's where I'm headed, all right? So those are all the kind of prep work things that you can do. Now let's get back to situation 1, where you thought you had the right topic, and and it's not really, laid out clearly, okay? So the thing to do when you get to that situation where you have a topic and they're like, yeah, no, we really want you to focus on to focus on this, the thing you want to do is to make sure that, number one, however you've been preparing your presentation, your speech, your workshop, is that you have a nice outline, okay? And because when you've made an outline, you've basically kind of organized your thoughts. That's all an outline is about. You know, you don't have to get into this whole big thing like you're about to prep some research paper or something like that. You know, you can get into that level of detail, but most presentations don't call for that all the time, okay? Unless they're like heavy on data or something like that. But regardless of that, your outline is really just you organizing your thoughts of based on what you've been told the topic is and where the focus is you saying, here's how I want to approach this, how I want to discuss it, and where I anticipate it getting to, where I anticipate it leading to. If you have that outline, right, and a lot of times it's those thoughts that come to you right after you've been mentioned or right after the opportunity's been presented to you, I highly encourage people to write those down, because sometimes you don't capture that later on and it's hard. You're always like, I had this really great thought. Write it down. You can flesh it out later, but write it down when it first comes to you. And make this a part of your outline. Like I said, these are the thoughts of where you think that you should go with this. Now, here's the deal. If you have that outline and you have some idea and you haven't fleshed it out yet, it should be easy enough to adjust. But here's the key thing. Make sure at this point that you are clear with the organization, the entity, whatever, your boss about, hey, okay, I heard you. This is where I was headed with this. Always don't be afraid to ask, can this still meet your needs? Where you were headed. If it's not, if it's like, well, no, we really want to do Y, then that's when you make sure that you clarify, okay, I was focused on X. You want me to focus on Y. I'm going to focus on Y. And here's how I'm going to go with this. And that's it. Because once you start doing that, then you're basing it. And I always say, make sure you follow up with that in writing, because that's the thing. Sometimes when you're talking to each other, and this gets to the second point, people don't necessarily hear and see the same things. Okay. So I highly suggest you do that follow up in writing. I don't care how many times you've talked to them, follow up in writing. All right. And use that outline. And what you do is you use your outline to adjust where you're going. It doesn't mean you have to ditch the outline. I've had moments where I've had a presentation and they're like, oh, but we really want to go, in this direction. And I've just adjusted the outline, because starting from scratch, especially depending on how much time you have, may not always be an option that you have. Okay. So just adjust the content, finesse what it is that you have outlined, make a few changes to it, and then finesse the content as you flesh it out to meet the needs of where you have clarified at this point where the organization or where the presentation needs to go. All right. That's the first situation. The second situation where you heard one thing, they heard another thing, and you're like, oh, we are not on the same page. Similar to the first, and kind of the same thing. If you have an outline, adjust it. Okay. Make sure you're clear. At this point, it's really, really important to be clear about what it is they really need and what it is they really want. I recently had a presentation, and this kind of blends the two, where I was asked to give this presentation on this particular topic, and it was about building communities. And the focus, as it had been defined by the program's developers, was they wanted it to have more of a political bent. But I said, okay, I could do that, but let's talk a little bit more about what it is you're really trying to get to. And when we talked further about what it is they really were trying to get to, I convinced them, I'm like, hey, I can give this presentation, but I think it would be more effective for your membership, for your attendees, to not narrow that focus so much and to come up a little bit, because these techniques and strategies can apply across the board and lots of different avenues besides just this one particular political bent. Okay. And they were open to that. And so that's how I shifted it. We came to agreement on it, and I shifted the presentation to do that. Now, here's the great thing about that. When I did the presentation the day, it was well received. And then later on, the next day, when a keynote got up to speak about some things, I'll be doggone if the keynote did not address one of his points squarely on the topic in which, and the way I had approached my topic the day before. I was like, yay, I had a complete deja vu moment. And when I spoke to one of the attendees from my session, they were like, yes, it was. Absolutely. I'm so glad I attended and was open to receiving what you had to say. All right. So those are things that can be done. Let's talk about the hard one here, right? Where it's like last minute, you've got a topic, you've been working on it, and they come to you and they're like, yeah, no, we need it to be this. You have a couple of options here, some of which are not so nice. One of them is squarely, let's look at the hard one, which is, hey, I can't adjust to that. Especially if you have less than 24, 48 hours and you discover this mistake or this misunderstanding or whatever, or this like, well, no, we really need it to be this way. And especially if it's, well, I don't know if it's what's worse, if it's a paid gig or not, it's bad either way. Is that, you could always decline to attend. It's like, hey, I've prepared, but I am not prepared for that. If that's what you absolutely need, I'm not going to be able to provide that because I don't have the time to prepare something, of that magnitude at this time. Like I said, that's an extreme case, but sometimes you do need to know that you may need to be willing to walk away. Most times people are not going to want that because if it's a presentation that needs to be made before a group, an organization or something like that, they'll make, they're just going to have to make the adjustments because otherwise what the reality is they have to find a speaker in the same type of time frame, okay? If it's a presentation for work, that's tough. That's tougher. And so you have the choices of, of telling your boss or whoever you're working with of, look, here's the deal. Do we really, is this really the focus? Here's how I worked it up. Here's how it's presented. Is there any way that this can be salvaged? If you want it to, and it needs to be this way, does it have to be made at this time? You can try and see if you can negotiate the time frame of the actual presentation. Again, now this is time when you're getting paid to do it. For your job, let's say, and so there may not be that option, but you do need to have a one-on-one, very upfront conversation with your boss or whoever to say, here's the deal, here's what you're going to get. It may not be fleshed out as much as you want because this is not the way that it was approached at all. Okay. Now let's get to this whole point of, okay, if it's not, you don't have the option or you're not going to exercise the option of walking away from the deal. Let's talk about, okay, you need, someone totally needing a different, topic or saying, it needs to be this other way. You have the option of number one of saying, hey, here's what I have. Can we go with what we have? And just announce it. Okay. Moving forward in that way. Or if you are open, God help us, to actually doing the new presentation in a different way or working on the topic in a different way, that takes a lot of skill. There aren't a lot of people that can do that. I will say that I know that I can, depending on the situation, but I will tell you why. That is because I have been trained as an extemporaneous speaker. And what that means is way back when, in my high school days moving forward, I've actually had the training to have a topic tossed in front of you on a moment's notice and to be able to prepare a full speech, or comments that flesh out in that short period of time. But again, that is because I've been trained that way and I've been trained to do that. Depending on the extent of the presentation, if it's a workshop or whatever, everyone can't make that adjustment, and that can cause a great deal of stress for if that expectation is put upon you.